Welcome to The Grind with Chris, where raw conversations meet real growth with life-changing perspectives.
In this episode, I'm going to go more in depth with some of the stuff that I talked about in the first episode. This is going to be a better in-depth look at my life and what I went through as a kid and what helped to mold me into the guy that I am now and once was. As I stated, I was born in California, and up until recently, I knew that my parents left because of drugs. I just didn't know the other information that I found out. Well, come to find out, my dad, my real dad, was mixed up with some really bad people. Well, instead of being the man that I thought he was and taking his own responsibility and accountability, he snitched, and I never knew it. I never knew it till now. I never knew it till 6 or so months ago. That the reason we left California is because my dad snitched on people. Like, why? Be accountable for your own actions. It's so easy to tell on people. Like, you're the one participating in that stuff. You're the one doing it as well. They didn't hold you at gunpoint and make you do it. So you snitch? It's the easy way out. It's bullcrap. And it really upset me when I found out that my dad couldn't accept his own flaws, and so he had to run. And I'm surprised they never found him. They're good at finding you. You only run for so long. We moved on our way to Colorado and stayed in Bullhead, Arizona, which is right across the bridge from Laughlin. I remember parts of that, but not very clear. But I do remember that we lived on a campground. And then we finally left there and we moved to Colorado. And I lived in Colorado all the way up until 2011. I grew up in a town called Rifle, Colorado, and a town called Parachute, Colorado. And up until I moved to North Dakota, I thought that we were from a small town. But then I look around and I deliver to places here in North Dakota, and you realize some of these places don't even have a cop. Some of these places, the sheriffs have to go out there and regulate things. Population 80. That makes me look like I lived in the city. There wasn't very many variety of people where I come from. There was Mexicans and there was whites. And in the 90s, it was an era where a lot of them were coming over illegally. So there was a lot of drugs. There was violence. ICE was constantly driving around the apartment complex once a week, rounding people up. And I don't got a problem with that. A lot of those people are trying to escape that life in Mexico. A lot of those people don't want to be part of the cartel. They don't want to be ran by them. Because I don't care who you are, the cartel runs Mexico. And these people were just trying to give their kids a different life. They didn't want them to have to deal with that things, and I don't blame them. Growing up, it was rough. If I ever wanted to get a hold of my parents, 9 times out of 10, I had to call the bar. I still know a few of the numbers at the top of my head, and they're not even bars anymore. I remember times of my stepdad chasing my mom up the street, drunk, yelling at her. He was abusive. He's still very abusive now, just verbally. A man like my stepdad was never supposed to be a father. Do I hate him for the things he did? No. He only knew what he was taught. He only did what his dad taught him. You can change, though. You don't have to follow in their footsteps. But he had it rough. I don't know much about his childhood, but I'm sure his dad was rough on him. It's a lot of the reason why he was rough on us. My real dad was only around for a little bit when he migrated to Colorado with us. I remember him being there. A lot of the time he was in jail. I remember he left, and I really never knew why. And my mom said it is because he couldn't stay off the drugs. My dad was a Woodstock guy. My dad was 11 years older than my mom. So he was partying and doing things way before my mom was. My dad was the life of the party, same way I was. Unfortunately, my dad killed himself in 98. And I think the biggest thing that bothers me about that is that he called me about a year before that. And I was so angry. I was so mad that I wasn't very nice to him. I said things that I probably shouldn't have said that were very hurtful. And I think it really hurt him. But I remember the last things that I ever told him was that I hated his guts. And to never call me again. And I hung the phone up. I did not know that that would be the last time I ever talked to him. And now I have my son being a teenager and doing the thing that teenagers do. Telling me he hates himself. He hates me. And I try to help him understand that I could not wake up tomorrow. And if those are the last words that he said to me, he'll regret it. But we lived in a trailer for the first 7, 8 years of my life. And then eventually the trailer was getting holes in it. It was decrepit. They didn't want it in their lot no more. So they kicked us out. And so we moved to Parachute, which is about 15 minutes away. Well, my dad, my stepdad, if I do refer to my dad now, it's going to be stepdad. I mean, he is my dad. He's been in my life since I was 3. But he used to work in Glenwood Springs, which is about 30 minutes east of Parachute. And so when he'd drive home, he would always stop at the bar in Rifle. Usually it's where my mom worked, was in Rifle. So they would sit there and get drunk all night. Most of the time they'd come home 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Sometimes they weren't as drunk as they were the nights before. But they'd come home, they'd drink, they'd party. Neighbors would come down. They'd come home with people. I had an uncle named Fred, one of the most influential people in my life. But I'll be straight with you, he's a piece of shit. And he's gone now, so I don't want to speak too ill of him. But he was another guy who never should have been a dad. He drank very excessively. He did drugs very excessively. I watched him try to scam companies, faking injuries, trying to get the easy dollar any way he could so he didn't have to work. Almost got away with it a couple times. Even once trying to do it to my father-in-law. I've known him to abuse women most of his life. But a lot of the stuff that he did with women in the bedroom, it's what I learned. I was a kid. I was curious. He would leave cracks in the door, let me watch. He tried to make vibrators and stuff out of 9-volt batteries and shampoo bottles. He could whip up any kind of mill just off the top of his head. I miss him, but he wasn't a very good influence. I watched him try to stab his brother a few times. Even one time he came pretty close. We had to call the cops on him, testify against him with the cops that if his brother wouldn't have moved within inches, he would have stabbed him, probably killed him. Even to this day, I mean, he's gone now, but they fight like crazy. You wouldn't think that they were brothers. Then we also had the neighborhood people. All the older people that hung out with my parents, all the drugs, all drank. It's really all there was ever to do around where we're from. I mean, if I was growing up there now, I'd be going fishing. I'd be walking the parks. I'd be doing a lot of things. I wouldn't be sitting there getting drunk all day, drinking my life away. Alcohol is very dangerous. And once it has a hold on you, it's hard. I don't know how I'm able to manage my drinking. I don't know how I'm able to have a few glasses and call it a day. I can't do it with anything else. Any addiction I've ever had, I've never been able to control it. And I think a lot of it is because I saw what it's done. And in the first episode, I mentioned what I was doing that I wasn't proud of. And I'm an alcohol delivery driver. And I deliver a lot of alcohol all week long. And a lot of the time, I feel like I'm a hypocrite because of it. Because I've seen alcohol destroy more lives. I've seen alcohol destroy more children than any other drug I've ever seen or heard of in my life. Alcohol is very dangerous, and it's dangerous because it's legal. And so I'm not happy where I'm at. But I also know that I'm not the one who forces you to drink. I sure don't tell you to drink it excessively. I don't tell you to go act a fool after you do drink it. And a lot of the reason you're acting a fool is because you drank too much. We need to quit abusing it. We need to quit thinking that we have to drink so much. Because the best thing to do is to have a glass, sit back and relax. Enjoy it for the flavor, the taste. Not drink $11 a bottle vodka. It's practically gasoline going in your body. What do you think the effects are going to be? They're not going to be good. You're going to feel like crap in the morning. But growing up around that, I would see my parents getting drunk all the time. And so what I'd do, I'd start smoking pretty early. I remember one time that my stepdad caught us in the trailer, 7 or 8 years old. And he came into the room and it was me, Landon, and Derek. And the room was full of cigarette smoke. And my stepdad was not happy. And when he was not happy, he was pretty violent. Come to find out years later, he was pretty violent with my big brother most of his childhood. Even came out that my real dad was violent with my big brother. He's about 7 years older than we are. My little brother is about 18 months younger than me. So my big brother went straight into the life that my parents were living. He started hanging out with the wrong people right away. And I think a lot of it, I blame on my parents. Because they made my big brother watch us. They made my big brother grow up a lot faster than he should have. They put a lot of pressure on him. And once he was old enough, he left. He went and ran the streets and did what he wanted to do, and I don't blame him. I wish he'd have made better choices, because those choices that he did make cost him all in on from the run in prison. I'd say about 20 years of his life. 20 years in and out of prison, 20 years on the run. It aged him, but it made him stronger. And our life experiences have built us into the men we are now. And he's doing great. He doesn't do the life he used to live. He's working for a good company. He's making more money than me or my little brother. I'm proud of him. But he has his struggles. He has his addictions. Do I like that he does them? No. Am I going to stop him from doing it? No. So all I can do is just talk to him and make sure that he's not making the dumbest of choices when it happens. All the way until I was 16, 17, my household wouldn't change. Same people in and out, same people doing drugs, same partying. I started to act out in middle school when I met my best friend. We started doing all kinds of stupid stuff. And eventually I'll get into stories about things I've done. But each thing I've done could be a complete episode. But we used to go and pick this flower that he said was moonflower on the side of the mountain, and we'd smoke it to try to get high. We tried smoking rat poison a few times to try to get high. We'd sneak out of his house, and we were like 15 years old. He was on an ankle monitor. He didn't care. He didn't care if he got in trouble. He had no respect for authority. He did not care at all. And so we would sit there in his mom's garage, and we would huff gas and paint thinner, and we'd leave, go hang out. I remember one night we snuck out, and we went and got drunk, and we both passed out at the house we were at when he was supposed to be at home because he's on an ankle monitor. And I tried to get him up, and he wouldn't get up, and I woke up and went to his house. And when I went back to his house to get into the room, I looked through the dining room window, and his mom was sitting right there on the table crying. And I felt so bad. And then I remember him begging her to let me stay the night again. And we went to Grand Junction, Colorado. And back then they had a CD store. It used to be like CD Now, and then it became FYE. It's hard to remember every single one of them. And he was stealing stuff. I was too. I was stealing CDs. I'm not going to pretend that I was a saint. Back then, stealing CDs was... most kids did it. We didn't have jobs. It wasn't very easy for us to get jobs where we're from because there wasn't very many to start with. And he got caught. And I remember that day we went to a Mormon church, the Latter-day Saints or whatever they are. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. And then after that, he was gone. He was sent to Provo, Utah, to a kid's home. And he went to leave that home. Days before he was supposed to get released, decided to take the car or the van and take off, and he wrecked and killed himself on the way home. And that was really the first person in my life that I began to start to do things with. And after that, it just seems like that's all I ever met. People who were doing drugs, people who knew how to get them. Even to this day, sometimes I feel like I have druggie written across the top of my head because people will come up and talk to me. They'll try to bum stuff from me. They'll ask me questions about drugs or where I can get them. And I don't know why. I don't put off that persona. I don't pretend to know where to get them. I don't know why people do that. I think a lot of it has to do with the tattoos. And a lot of people have come up to me because I have the Serenity Prayer on my arm and asked me how long I've been clean and how long I've been free. And at first, I didn't know what they were talking about. I thought it was odd. Well, come to find out, the Serenity Prayer is for people in recovery. I just like the prayer. But back then, I didn't believe in God. I didn't believe in anything. I was too mad at the world. I blamed God for the life he gave me and the life I was living. So I didn't put it on the prayer. Still isn't on my arm to this day, the word God. I always thought he was more of like a slot machine, that I could just call on him when I wanted to and ignore him when I didn't. I would spend years in prison. I'd read Quran. I read the Bible. I got over 40 correspondence courses. I spent my time trying to understand, trying to see what all the talk about him was. I still don't know what to believe. I have my doubts, just like anybody else. We met this guy from a friend of mine. Older gentleman, 60-something years old, very church-going guy. Well, he used to take us out and spend money on us and take us to Grand Junction, and we'd go eat. And there was a place called Sizzler, and Furs was another restaurant then. And it was awesome. Nobody did that for us. My parents sure didn't. They couldn't stay sober long enough. They didn't bother to try to. Trips for my family were far and few. I do remember us going. I remember Disneyland. I remember going to Laughlin and Mesquite, Nevada. As I said, I'm trying not to diss my parents so much that it makes it seem like I don't love them or that I have complete hatred for them, because I don't. Do I respect all the decisions they ever made? No. I think a lot of it is just the fact that I knew that they could stay sober if they wanted to, but they never tried. And the lifestyle and stuff that they brought us into, they taught us about, was a hard lifestyle to get myself out of eventually. But this old man, we'll call him Leonard to save his name. I'm not going to tell you his real name. But Lenny would take us to Grand Junction, and he would spend money on us. And back then we collected hockey cards and baseball cards, and we did what you did in the 90s. And it wasn't hate each other. Friendships were real. And I still have a couple friends from that time. Do we hang out? No. We all live in different states. One of them's come pretty religious. The other one has had his second baby. But they're really the only kind of friends I would say that I still have alive. But the one influenced me in the wrong ways. He was always the way I got the drugs. He was always knew the people where I could get the meth and the coke. And we'd steal pills from these older couple that got all kinds of medical pills. We did things that are hard to be faced with, to think about. And so we would go to Taos, because in order for him to do what he did, to spend the money on us, we'd have to go to church with him the next day. And so in order to do that, and instead of running us around and grabbing all of us, because there was 4 or 5 of us that he would always take, we would go and he would let us stay the night. Well, as we stayed the night, he'd make us take a bath. And for the longest time, I didn't think nothing about it. And us together as friends, we would take baths together. Well, he would come in and he would wash us. And then to come to find out later down the line that he was going into the room of one of the guys that was with us, who at the time didn't have a dad. I think he saw him as vulnerable. And in his defense, he said that he would come in and rub around his crotch area while he was sleeping. And he sure the hell wasn't going to do it to me or my brother. My stepdad had cremated him. My stepdad's an old biker. He used to be very powerful. He used to be able to fight. He still thinks he's the same thing now, but he's a shell of the man he once was. He's dying. He's fading away. So we all ended up having to go to the state, and they asked us a bunch of questions. And I didn't think nothing about it at the time, but now that I look back on it, yeah, it was pretty weird. Definitely was close to molestation. With the other one, I would say he was definitely molesting him. Do we know if that was really happening? No. I don't think that he would have made it up. So I think that was pretty much the start of everything. And he would touch me, washing me, giving me a bath. We were, 9, 10 years old, maybe 11 or 12. And so he was molesting us. And the guy who introduced him to us, who's still a very good friend of ours that we grew up with, he still defends him to this day. He ended up doing his time. He got out. I don't think, if he is still alive, he's pretty old. But I don't think that he's able to go around kids the way that he did. And it sucked. And I think that's really what began my distrust in God, is because this man knew the Bible. This man took us to church every day. This man would get mad at us if we talked in the church. But he was the complete opposite. As that started, I started to take my parents' alcohol. For the longest time, I would fill up their bottle of vodka, because they bought about a half a gallon of vodka every night, or they'd buy half a gallon of rum. It just depends what mood they were in. They always had beer. There was at least 20, 30 beers there, and I would take it. And in order to make sure that they didn't know, I would fill the vodka or the rum back up with water. And I did that for a long time, about a year or so. Well, in that time, I started hanging out with somebody. She was very, very overweight at the time. And me, being a teenager I was, oh no, I won't sleep with those people. They're too big, they're not pretty enough. And I wasn't really like that with anybody. Like, all my friends weren't the best to look in, and I'd date them. And for some reason, I would just judge her because she was overweight. And we hung out, but every time we hung out, I was very intoxicated. I was drinking heavily at that time from stealing my parents' alcohol. And she called me when I was about 15, 16 years old. We quit hanging out. We only hung out for about 2 or 3 weeks. And she told me she was pregnant. And I said, well, it ain't mine, because I don't recall us ever having sex. But like I said, I was very intoxicated at the time. And so I told her that I wasn't ready. Well, she had just recently, lost a baby. And so she said she wanted to keep it, and that she wouldn't come after me. I said, all right. I said that I wanted a blood test, and that was it. Last time I talked to her. Time would just keep going. High school, I was great. I was good in school. I was the chess club president. I was the manager of the football team. I played football in middle school. All up until my mom came in 98 to our practice and told me that my dad killed himself. After that, I didn't really play sports anymore. Went to high school, and I didn't want to keep my grades up. I started to act out about that time, I would say, is really when it happened. So I would end up going to high school. And the people that I went to high school with knew me most of my life. They knew I was broke. They knew who my parents were. They knew that my parents were drunks. And they treated us that way. And I didn't wear the best of clothes because my little brother always wanted the higher dollar shoes. My little brother always wanted to fit in. And he was the prep. He was the one who played the basketball in high school and stuff. So I went without so he could have it. I wore Faded Glory. I wore Kmart branded clothes. I didn't care. Still don't care to this day. I don't have to wear Louis Vuitton, Gucci. What a waste of money. Why? So people can look at me, know that I have money, and try to take it from me? People wonder why rappers are getting shot from robberies and stuff. Well, when you're going out and flaunting a $200,000 or $300,000 watch or chain, people are going to want it. A $200,000 watch to me right now would change my life. It'd get me completely out of debt. I'd have enough for a full house payment. So I don't necessarily think that we should be judged by the clothes we wear. High school, I acted out. I ditched a lot. Started to get into drugs a lot more. Pot was definitely my thing. Then became meth. I was always trying to fight teachers. I was constantly being kicked out. In middle school, I had a plaque that my principal thought was funny that he put over one of the detention chairs that said it belonged to me because I was always there, constantly going into detention because I didn't want to listen to nobody. But I was being a product of my environment. There was violence around my house. My stepdad, I would hear him yelling at my mom in the room, and sometimes I would hear his fist off her back because she snored. And they don't stay in the same room no more. But he was not a nice guy. He never was the kind of guy where I could go up with problems and talk to him. He would embarrass us in front of our friends. I watched him bust my little brother's nose right in front of my friends. He would grab me and shake me and yell at me. And I understand, I gave him a hard time. I didn't make it easy on him. Let's just say that. But he didn't have to hit us. He didn't have to abuse us. It didn't help us. It only made us worse. And I know to this day now, he loves us. He just didn't know how to show it back then. And back then, the alcohol was what did teaching us. And to this day, he drinks from 1 to 6 o'clock every day. He does his shots, drinks his beers, gets very intoxicated, sometimes to the point you can't understand anything he's saying. And then he goes to bed and he repeats it. And last I knew, he's on probably around 1,800 days straight, if not more, of drinking every single day. His skin's starting to change colors. He's not breathing well. He's dying, and it's sad to watch. But what upsets me the most is that my mom's got to go through it because she gave all that up. She stopped drinking, stopped smoking cigarettes. So as the years passed growing up, we had just learned from everybody who was there. My mindset at the time was, I'm just going to be what they want me to be. I'm just going to do what I see them do. I ended up doing probably one of the worst mistakes ever. I robbed a friend of my parents' house, took all their weed, took this pony keg of change that he'd been saving for most of his life, ended up getting, I don't know, a couple $100 out of it. And I think that's really when the criminal in me started to come out. And that guy has never forgiven me, and I know he probably won't. And I hope that one day he can, but he's not going to make or break me. I have apologized. I paid the money back that I took. It almost got me some severe charges. I almost got like second-degree burglary, first-degree trespass. I ended up being able to get it expunged because I was underage. Well, not expunged, but deferred. And so I just couldn't get in trouble. I was constantly doing community service growing up. I was always getting caught smoking cigarettes. It just began to crumble at that time. And that's when the consequences really started. I started to see what road I was going to go down. And I had no urge to stop. I figured that I was going to go as far as I could go and live the life that I was taught. I ended up dropping out of school, moved into a house with a couple girls that were in love with each other, started making meth on the stovetop. That didn't last very long. I ended up wrecking a car, almost killed me and 2 people. That'll be an episode I'll talk about eventually sometime. But I was lucky to live. I still got the scar on my head. I was inches away from the glass going inside my head. Almost bled to death. Almost killed 2 people. And that's when we ended up moving back to Rifle. And the whole time, I thought I was in control. Control of my life, control of my decisions. I would just go deeper and deeper. I'd start selling. I'd sell so that way I could keep doing it and not have to pay anything. I'd make a little bit of cash here and there. But I was definitely one of the examples that they say don't get high on your own supply, because if you do, then you just keep doing your supply, and before you know it, your profits are down. Yeah, I stayed high. Yeah, I didn't have to worry about paying for it. But even the people that were selling that to me would say they were my friend, but yet they'd keep feeding it to me. Like, how are you my friend if you continually feed me drugs? He would eventually get me mixed into the Mexican mafia. Some pretty bad dudes. The first part of my years, I was doing it and I couldn't pay him back. That didn't turn out good. Got threatened. Gun held at my head. All while my second baby's mom was pregnant. I ran around on her, cheated on her, ended up coming back. Things were never the same. I got her started on drugs. She ended up having a seizure one night because we hadn't eaten nothing because we'd been up all night. And she got pregnant and she stopped. But I was too far in it. I was too high. I didn't want to stop. So I took off. Left her pregnant. Left her alone. Went. Got with girls that were doing it with me. And then I had to take off to Washington. So I missed pretty much all of her pregnancy. Then time eventually came where she was going to have the baby. So I came back. Years later, I would get hooked right back up with the guy who threatened me with the gun. And he didn't remember too much of it. Thank God. And we'd hang out in Denver. I got deep into it again. And at that time, I had drugs and guns and everything coming in and out of my house. But I had made my wife and my third son, well, he'd be my second son, but my third child, to stay in Rifle about 2.5 hours away, so that way they weren't involved in that life. And then eventually I got to the point where, they were bringing in a lot of weapons, a lot of drugs. I had to step back and look at my life and realize, what am I doing? Is this really what I want? Then we were at a barbecue one night in Denver, Colorado, and there had been this one part of the Crips, and he was looking for this guy who he'd let him use his bulletproof vest. Well, the guy never gave it back, and he kept asking him for it. And so we were all out there barbecuing. We were all out there having fun, and a car pulls up and calls the guy who had borrowed the vest up towards the car, and down came the window and a shotgun blast. Shot him right in the chest. And there's not many people who know about that. I don't even know if it was ever really solved. I didn't stick around to see what the outcome of that was going to be. At that point in my life, I knew I had to leave. I had to escape. So I brought my wife and my son up, started to kick the people out that were coming over. For the longest time, people would still come up and knock at the door, and I'd just ignore it. And I knew at that time that I had to get my family out of that apartment. Now, granted, I ended up getting us kicked out because I didn't respect people below me or anybody at that time. Up until prison, life was about me. Wasn't about nobody else. Wasn't about my wife. Wasn't about my son. I was selfish. I cared about my own habits. I cared about my own desires. I didn't bother to think about them and the consequences that it would have on them. But then we ended up moving, and that's up until I moved in with my wife's friend that she worked with. We lived there for a little while. At that time, it would have been a lot more expensive for me to get a job and my wife to have a job to pay for daycare. So I stayed home because she was in college and she was a pharmacy tech, so she's always had a better career than I have. Up until this job I have now, I constantly floated from job to job. I worked for the same oil field company for probably about 10 years, but it was several different times. And that's when we moved to North Dakota. And that's when things started to get even worse. And there are a lot more stories that I have from the times in Colorado, and I will share them as episodes come. But as I said, my stories could be made into movies. The experiences that I had, they're funny now, but they weren't funny at the time. And in this next episode, I'm going to tell you about how the downfall of my life started, which was a 2-year period. Because most of my life, I was always able to get out of stuff. I was always able to escape getting criminal charges. Sure, I had a lot of minor possessions, cigarettes, alcohol, but I never really got caught with anything else. But then I moved here, and things were going great up until we started to hire the wrong people. And my father-in-law is the most influential man that's ever been in my life. In this life, you have 4 categories of people: adders, subtractors, multipliers, and dividers. And I will eventually have a podcast episode explaining these things and how we come up with them. And it's not my idea. It's not my original. I learned it in prison from a book that I read, and the people used to come in and do seminars and stuff with people. But it was called The Power of People. And James Cooper was a multiplier in my life. And you only get a few. You only get a few multipliers in your entire life. And James Cooper was mine. I have more respect for him than I do my stepdad. My father-in-law has given me more opportunities and more chances to be something in my life than my father ever did. And so, through all this, I thought that I had control, but I didn't. And these next 2 episodes, you're going to laugh. They're funny. They're not going to seem realistic, but I have witnesses to everything. And not just one witnesses, several witnesses who witnessed the exact same thing that I'm about to tell you happened. But I hope that showing you these and exposing myself, that you'll see that there's hope out there for us. There's a chance to change. There's a chance to be different. We just have to go and do it. We have to change. It is hard, but it's not as hard as we think it is. You're going to have times where you want to give up, but that's when progress is really being made. When your body and your mind is wanting to quit, the real change is happening, and you have to fight through it. So I hope that you will come and follow me to the next episode and see what my hope is for you after showing you where I've been and what I've done. And these 2 episodes was about a 2-year span, and it was the worst but best time of my life. Worst because I lost everything, even my freedom. But best because it's what started me to realize that I wanted to be more, that I wanted to help people and not pollute them. So I ask that you'll follow me to the next episode, because I was my own worst enemy, and now I'm my greatest asset. I hope to see you there.